Hello. Hey, Tom. Is it just you and me in here today? Oh, hello. Sergeant Mustang's here. Let me see if I can get the chat up like I... Do I sound a lot louder? Hello, Cool Banana. CJ13 Go 69. Amyak Yoin. Let's see. Banners. How did I do that? I remember how I did that, where I had the chat on the screen. I think it was no, that's not it. Okay. I'll find it here somewhere. Well, maybe not. It's been a while since I've done it. Excuse me. I've been sneezing. I think allergy season's coming for me. How y'all doing? Hello. Oh, heck yeah. Subscribe to Tom's Table. Caught up with the literacy test video the other day, and boy, that was actually impossible. Yeah, I know, right? It's ridiculous. Woke mom doesn't want us to watch this. That's right. Jumbo. Yeah, there we go. Jumbo is here. Oh, and thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. Yeah. Amiak Yoin. Did you hear about PragerU creating an ideology test for Oklahoma teachers to keep their jobs? And PragerU potentially replacing PBS? We are in hell. Yeah, no, I did hear about the PragerU being a collaborator, potentially, yeah, replacing PBS. Although PBS isn't going away, the funding is from the federal government has been devastated. But I don't think PragerU is going to take it out. I think PBS is a much bigger force, and I don't know. I just don't see it going that far. I mean, if there's a lot of people that hate PragerU at this point, actually, that if you go to their, I don't know if you've been to their channel lately, but they're kind of a joke. They don't get that many views anymore. Let me just show you. I haven't been on there actually myself for a while, but let's see here. So if you just go to, oh, that's one of the videos we're reacting to today. So you go to PragerU's YouTube channel. Okay, they posted this lady here who's like the lead propagandist for the channel now. Or the spokesperson, I should say. She's been doing these podcasts, these interviews. It's called Real Talk. And that video did all right, 61,000 views in one day. But if you look overall,
why?
350,000 views. I stand corrected. Oh, is PragerU the new PBS? PragerU kids replacing PBS. Oh, cool. That's interesting. Maybe I'll react to that one. 581,000 views. What the heck? They must have paid for ads for those videos. Yeah. Because then you go back over here. This one only has 9,500. This one has 11,000. John Witherspoon. Heck yeah. I love John Witherspoon. And George Wythe. Yeah, these guys. Oh, they did AI videos. Oh, that's really cringy. But no, apparently they either have hundreds of thousands of views or 10,000 views. It's weird, a weird jarring back and forth, which to me shows that this is not organic stuff. This is astroturfed. So they advertise a lot still. I know that's how they get a lot of their views, is they advertise. Should we watch that PragerU kids replacing PBS video? What do you think? Yeah, they've always relied on ads. I actually I had two videos lined up today about two presidential elections, the presidential election of 1876 and the election of 2004. Two very different elections, but two new videos recently came out that examined them. And of course, I'm the presidential election guy. I should probably check this out. I mean, full disclosure, I have shown a PragerU video to my students in class. Now, granted, this was in the year 2000 and I think 14 or something. Back then, they were. I thought that they were a real university, and they did have a good Civil War video. It featured a Civil War historian. It was a nice, quick 5-minute video that introduced my kids to the topic, and it was actually, if you go back and try to find that video, I did fairly recently. It holds up. It's all right. A lot of their content, especially their early content, was okay. It was benign. It was educational. However, they became more sensational and agenda driven. I would say beginning in 2016 is when things really got really crazy. But they've always been an indoctrination channel. But I fell for it in 2014. I fell for it. So I get why teachers fall for it. A lot of teachers probably think they're just putting on a objective history video, and then yeah. Yeah, it's the Boone University. Keeps getting, or Boone U. So not PragerU, Boone U. We're going to be watching that. Yes, I know they're allowed to show them in Florida. They're allowed to show them everywhere, really. I mean, there's no laws saying you can't show PragerU videos, and as far as I know, there's no school district in the country that says you can't play them. I mean, teachers have a lot of autonomy as far as what they show their kids in the classroom. To a captive audience, I should say. You're not a captive audience. I know you're my students here, but you don't have to be here. You don't have to be at this class. I don't take attendance. I mean, I kind of do, but well, let's go ahead and react to 3 videos real quick here. I would hope they make fun of them. Ooh. Yeah, let's see what this has to. We'll watch the PragerU video real quick. I think it's a quick video anyway.
In the belly of the beast. I'm sitting here with the CEO of PragerU, which we all know if you watched, CNN or, you saw anything from Vox, they are the new PBS. Which I think because Marissa Stride is the CEO, she's up here at my ranch because we're filming some stuff for PragerU Kids, right? And does that make me Elmo or?
I think you're more of a Big Bird.
Big Bird. Okay, good. All of a sudden, it doesn't feel so great. So they're claiming that you are becoming the new PBS because you're going after our kids. Can you just, first of all, do you get any money from the federal government?
We won't take $1 from the government. That's in our mission.
I would hope not. Okay, let's look at the funding for PBS, because I think that this is AI that popped up here, but right off the bat it says that as of 2025, federal funding accounts for about 15% of PBS's revenue. I've come across similar figures before. But yeah, the vast majority of their funding already is not from the federal government. So they're not going away. PBS is not going away. If you've heard someone say that, it's not going to happen anytime soon. They're still doing all right. You might see more shows get canceled, but I think overall it's going to be fine for a while.
Well, Stu, help me out. Doesn't that automatically disqualify you from being PBS? mean,
it does. I would say it does. Yes.
I mean, I think the big thing about PBS is they're taking our federal dollars and using it in ways that I don't necessarily agree with, and they can make money on their own. So I think the press misses what the problem is with PBS. So tell me about what you are doing right now, because there's several things. First of all, let's start.
And just to reiterate, we're talking about $535 million this year came from taxpayer dollars. So if you take the population of the United States, about 335 million people, it's like less than $2 a person. We're talking very small numbers here for as far as what our tax. I mean, it just blows my mind how people like Glenn Beck make it such a big deal that a little bit of tax dollars cover the funding for PBS.
With the 250th anniversary. What are you doing on the 250th anniversary?
So PragerU uses edutainment. And so in some ways, they're comparing us to PBS because of that, because we believe that learning should.
I mean, it's not that entertaining. Let's be honest. It's a lot of their videos are pretty boring.
Be fun and it should be entertaining.
Right.
And that oftentimes when you're entertained, you can learn. And so in that way, we are somewhat similar to PBS.
Right.
But what we are doing is we're celebrating America. America has never been perfect, but it's the greatest country on God's green earth.
Right.
And when we are teaching kids to grow up and not love their country, it is causing so many problems. It's a national security issue.
Literally, no one is teaching our kids to hate the United States in public schools. So this is a straw man. This does not happen. Maybe you could say that some people online are trying to teach people to hate the United States, but it's just absurd to say that a history teacher, an American history teacher in particular, is trying to teach our kids to hate the United States. So they've created this imaginary boogeyman. It doesn't exist, to justify like, oh yeah, we need to only look at good stuff that the United States has done.
It's a mental health issue for our children.
Big time.
And so we are taking this opportunity for America's 250th birthday to just reignite patriotism and give some perspective that, yes, America has its blemishes. Of course it does. But America is a great country and has been a leader in greatness for so many years. And we want to teach that. And so what we are doing is we're creating content.
It's taught all the time. I would say 75 to 80% of most American history curriculums in the United States consist of content that makes the United States look good. The other 15, 20% maybe at most is the stuff like, the Trail of Tears or Japanese internment camps or imperialism, Native American mistreatment. I just think that the vast majority of stuff that we teach, the way we frame American history already, the de facto, like the situation already is that, yeah, we're mostly focusing on the good. When we talk about any war, for the most part, other than maybe Vietnam and a little bit Philippine-American War, even though that's usually not even brought up in American history classrooms, we're talking about, the United States is on the right side of history, despite the fact that any war is horrible. Horrible things happen in war. It's the worst part of humanity throughout human history. The worst of us has been seen during these conflicts in which there's atrocities. So to say that anybody is on the good side of any war, it's really difficult, except maybe World War II. It might be the lone exception in terms of okay, it's pretty clear that there's one side here that's way better than the other side. But even then, we were allied with Joseph Stalin, for crying out loud, a lesser of the two evils. So I don't know. I just think it's ridiculous to say that Kids are not being taught a positive view of the United States when they learn about its history. That's just patently false.
And for every single learner, 4 years
Mhm.
old, all the way through 104,
Mhm.
to remember what our country is about, what our DNA is.
And the nice thing is that it's actual history. I mean, we cut
Actual
something
history, the real
yesterday.
history.
We're working on several of these videos that are going to be used in AP classes, right? So this is
AP classes.
AP history in high schools.
Yes. I mean, look, so many Americans are learning history through the lens of Howard Zinn. For those who don't know who
No.
Howard Zinn is, I think he categorically destroyed the
Yes.
the history classes in
Mhm.
America.
Mhm.
They talk about Howard Zinn the same way they talk about George Soros. It's basically, oh, here's this boogeyman that presents a different narrative of American history that's critical of it. And then they make it seem like, oh, he's had this really huge impact on the way we teach history. No, he hasn't. Like, I would say he's had a little bit of impact. If you look at the People's History of the United States, I think it was first published in the late 1960s. Let's look at that. Look that up. Oh, it wasn't until 1980. So, but he's very much a man of that time. If you look at the group of historians that became prominent beginning in the 60s and through the 70s, it was a group that largely was critical of a lot of the justified ways, the ways that the American government had justified hierarchies in the past. And so People's History, I guess, was like a culmination of all that. But it was basically just like more of a realistic view of things. And it wasn't like, it was like the first history we saw of the United States that was really going out of its way to not be just patriotic history. Like, hey, we can just try to look at this as if we're outsiders looking at the United States. And also, more importantly, a People's History of the United States was meant to shine light on people who had previously been ignored. So, minority groups, the working class, marginalized groups that had been discriminated against for so long. Of course, it's activism. It was an activist book. They had an agenda. Howard Zinn had an agenda. He still does. He's never hid that. That's nothing. But I mean, it's the same thing like this. But he's one guy. It's one book. I would say it's had an effect, but it's not like something that completely changed the way we teach our kids in public schools. That's just not true at all. But it helps them if they have a boogeyman, just like with George Soros. Like, oh, they zoom in on one billionaire when the fact is there are dozens, if not hundreds, of billionaires that actually pay politicians. So they just they target one because it's easier, I guess, to do it that way.
Right? Teaching a perspective. Not all of it was a lie, but it's the footnotes.
Correct.
It's without the greater perspective of what America is. And so we are taking.
Do you think she's read Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States? I bet you she's never even read it.
American history, and we're making it fun and engaging. And so that students who would watch this course that we're creating together will not only learn the truth about America, but will have a perspective and enjoy doing it at the same time. That's the edutainment piece of it.
And
I do agree, though, there's going to be a backlash. When it comes down to it, the kids rebel against their parents, at least somewhat. Mostly we do kind of carry on the values of our parents. A lot of times, though, parents will pass down values to their kids, and the parents are hypocritical about those values, and the kids call out the hypocritical, like the parents being hypocritical. Like, for example, a Gen X parent today raising their kids to say, hey, I believe in equality for all. Every group deserves the same exact rights. But now that Gen X parent is like, well, I don't know about the transgender people. Transgender people are different. Maybe they don't get the same equality that everyone else does. I mean, come on. That's what I'm talking about. The kid sees their Gen X parent and they're like, what the heck are you talking about? They're a human. They just you raised me to believe that everybody's equal. And now you're saying that they're not equal to us. So yeah, I agree, Cool Banana. I mean, a lot of this stuff is just, we're living in a reactionary period right now, and it's very difficult to live through these times. But at the same time, we know that there's going to be a backlash effect. Absolutely. All right, let's try to finish this. Maybe we
really amazing, because we're not avoiding the bad stuff. We're doing something today on slavery.
Yes.
And I saw it somewhere. I read, they were accusing you guys of PragerU is just
slavery is one of the things that they want to remove exhibits from the Smithsonian. So, you're mentioning, oh yeah, we cover slavery. Slavery's bad. Also, though, PragerU has a video about slavery in which they literally say, well, everybody did slavery, so we can downplay the slavery that happened in the United States because, black people used to have slaves too back in Africa. It's ridiculous.
Missing slavery and saying it's no big deal. And I'm like, on what planet, in what parallel universe is PragerU saying that?
Well, what they're saying is, we made a video that teaches about Christopher Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
And we basically paraphrased what he would have said to two young kids. And from Christopher Columbus's perspective, he probably thought that slavery was okay because that's what he did. And so because we had the cartoon, Christopher Columbus, say, oh, I think slavery is okay.
Right.
And then the kids responded back to him in this show that we made, well, actually, slavery is abhorrent. It is a horrible thing.
Right.
We know today that it was a terrible thing that the world engaged in slavery. And then Christopher Columbus in this cartoon responds and says, oh, wow, I didn't have that perspective. I didn't know.
Uh-huh.
That is why we are being attacked, because we are paraphrasing what Christopher Columbus would have said. And so what is the silly
paraphrasing? Okay. Also, I think the problem with that, I think we reacted to the Christopher Columbus video on Twitch once. But if I recall, that Christopher Columbus video, the whole point of that video was to make Christopher Columbus look better. PragerU had an agenda. They're like, we need people to stop criticizing Christopher Columbus. That was their point of that video. And so that's the criticism here. We're not talking about like, oh, we're not going to be nitpicky about, obviously the kids in that video were telling him, oh no, the slavery is bad. And Columbus is like, oh, okay. No. Like, I think the whole point of learning why Christopher Columbus was a bad guy was to show that, hey, maybe we shouldn't treat this guy as a saint. I mean, look at how many things are named after Columbus, and the fact that he had a holiday. So many cities, high schools. I mean, I just drove from Columbia, Missouri to Columbus, Ohio the other day. They're 8 hours apart. I know that because that was a long drive. I'll talk. I went to Ohio last week. I drove there. It was crazy. Anyway, but yeah, there's a country named after Columbus, Columbia, for crying out loud. So this is somebody who's elevated. There's statues of him everywhere. He's celebrated all over the place. And so what happened was a few people began to criticize him for the slavery and the exploitation and just the colonization. And in response to that, you had a reactionary group that said, well, you can't be criticizing Columbus. He's awesome. And that was literally the reason why they made that video. So I think the fact that their intent was to make Columbus look better than he was, that's the freaking problem, PragerU. That's the problem.
Media do. I mean, it's completely cuckoo. They're claiming that PragerU is claiming that slavery was okay because the character in our cartoon, that character Christopher Columbus, said it was okay.
No, nobody's saying that. Nobody is saying that PragerU endorses slavery.
You know, it's amazing. I think this stuff is coming undone quickly, and they're panicking. I mean, look what you're doing with teachers. Okay, these teachers are moving from, deeply blue states into red states, and the states rightfully, are saying, we don't want any of that California crap in our schools.
By the way, California ranks in the top 10 in education. Most of the red states are in the bottom half of the rankings. Most infamously, Oklahoma, who has a superintendent who's a Christian nationalist who basically thinks that Bibles should be issued to kids. He's trying to make that happen. He thinks that teachers should be indoctrinating their kids with the PragerU crap that we've been mentioning here. They are 49th or 50th in education. So that's the problem here. They say they want smart kids that are educated on the facts. But no, what they really want, what folks like PragerU, the people at PragerU and Glenn Beck want, is indoctrination. They want to indoctrinate your kids. They don't want them to critically think. They want to teach them what to think, not how to think.
But if they're licensed to be a teacher, they can teach anywhere. But that's now changing because states are saying, no, you're coming from.
No, that's not. No, each state has different requirements for license to get a license. I was licensed up in Nebraska, and I'm licensed in Kansas. Different requirements in just those two bordering states.
California, you're coming from New York. I want to make sure that you know the things that are true, and we're not having any of this woke crap. This test that you're giving now,
woke crap meaning you're criticizing in the United States. I think in this context, that's what Glenn Beck means when he says you're woke. That means you're teaching about the bad stuff that the United States has done.
And you've been asked by the states to develop this test. And it is so, to me, first grade kind of questions. I can't believe there is a problem with this at all.
I mean, we're living in shocking times, Glenn. It's shocking. People can see the test. We've made this test available. They can go to our website. They can check it out. The test is so very basic.
If you want to check out the YouTuber Zoe B, she's looked at that test before, and it's very 1950s like.
The fact that the media and the administrators of woke schools are squealing over this test is unbelievable. It is so very, very basic. But you're right. In California,
that's the problem. That's the problem, that it's so very, very basic. We want our kids to critically think about things. We don't want to just have them regurgitate information, basic memorization of random facts. We want them to think deeply about issues, because in order to solve problems, in order to truly learn lessons, they have to think deeply.
Are required to take a course called the PRISM test. I like to call it the prison test because, frankly, I think teachers should go to prison.
If you can't pass this,
yes, it's crazy. The PRISM test.
Should she just say she thinks teachers should go to prison? By the way, has she ever taught before? Does she have an education degree? Has she ever been a licensed teacher anywhere before?
Is given to Californian teachers it's not a test, it's a course. It's a 6-part course that teaches a teacher how to not differentiate between a boy and a girl, how to actually bring all of this sexualization that we've been.
Cry about it. Who the heck cares if a person is a boy or a girl? They're a human being. If a student walked in my classroom, I would teach them the same no matter what their gender was, no matter what their sexuality was. You just treat them as a person. You don't have to focus on their sexuality. The fact that these folks keep bringing it up, that is creepy as heck. Creepy. I would not, these two people in a classroom, I would have other adults around to make sure there wasn't anything creepy going on, frankly.
Complaining about in classrooms. And so it's not just superintendents of education that have approached us with questions. How do we help teachers do the right thing? It's also parents. Parents are coming to us and saying, well, we don't know if we can trust these teachers anymore. We're going to send our kids to our schools. And
they say that because they watch people like you that create this mistrust that was not there before. You have created this mistrust because you have made it so no longer are experts respected. We now live in a time when experts are no longer respected. Everybody thinks they're an expert about everything.
And have a teacher that can't pass a basic civics test, that can't pass a basic literacy test, that can't pass a basic understanding of what a boy is and what a girl is. So Superintendent of Education Ryan Walters of Oklahoma approached us and said, can you just do something very basic, because the complaints are coming in when parents are sending their kids to.
Ryan Walters, by the way, the guy who wanted to ban pornography in Oklahoma, got caught recently watching porn at work. The Oklahoma superintendent, there were witnesses that said he was watching pornography at work, and it was displayed on a big screen in front of everybody at present. So is he going to get sued for sexual harassment? Is he going to get fired for that? I doubt it.
Schools where teachers who have come in from California and New York are in charge of a classroom and are bringing in the woke indoctrination that they've received in California.
Any idea how many teachers are failing this test?
Well, we are launching this test now.
Okay.
So this is a brand new test, but I can tell you how many
wait.
teachers have been forced to pass the PRISM test in California, almost every single one of them.
So listen to some of these questions. Stu, this is multiple choice. This is not a setup. This is multiple choice. So, I mean, you'll get everyone. This is the first question. What's the primary biological distinction between males and females? A, height and weight. B, hairstyle. C, personal preference. D, chromosomes and reproductive anatomy.
That's a tough one.
That's a tough one.
Leaning hairstyle. But
at birth, how is a person's biological sex typically identified? A, personal feelings. B, parental choice. C, online registration. D, visual anatomical observation and chromosomes.
That's a fascinating one. I mean, obviously.
Why do they have to answer these questions to begin with? Why? There's no good reason why they have to take this test.
The answer is D, but I would say a lot of people on the left would say B, right? Like it's parental
Personal
preference or something.
Yeah, right. Or personal feelings. I mean, this only gets hard if you are completely disconnected from science and reality.
Well,
no, it's just what you're trying to do is you're trying to weed out people that don't think like you do. That's what you're trying to do with these tests.
Mentioned science and reality. I have spoken to pediatricians and doctors, frankly, from all over the country, who are forced to erase the question of whether they have a boy or a girl in the medical charts when they're receiving a new patient. So this is not just a problem in schools, but this is a problem in pediatric offices as well. So yes, sadly, we are living in the twilight zone where teachers have to be taught very basic common sense.
Listen to this. Name one reason the colonists fought the British. A, avoid working the land. B, higher social standing. C, resist forced army service. D, protest high British taxes without representation. I mean, honestly, fifth graders in my day, would be able to take this. 100 years ago, first graders would be insulted by these. Who was the first president? John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Greg Washington, or George Washington? I'm pretty sure it was Greg. What did the Emancipation Proclamation do? Ended prohibition, freed Confederate generals, freed the slaves in the North, freed the slaves in the South. Honestly, you cannot be a teacher if you don't know these things.
We agree. And as much as we're giggling about it, and it sounds funny, but it's really not funny, Glenn. It's really sad and it's really upsetting. Part of what this test is doing is it's actually recalibrating what is happening in the classrooms. It's reminding teachers to focus on what matters. It's reminding teachers to actually look at the world through common sense, a lens of common sense.
Common sense, family values, crap that just doesn't mean anything. All right, so I'm done watching that crap. This Marissa Straight person, I guess she's straight, She's let's see, this is her bio on PragerU's website. It says she has a bachelor's degree in business and economics from UCLA. She got her education in California. That's interesting. Her master's degree in education and nonprofit management from the AJU. I don't know what AJU stands for, but so education and nonprofit management, is that lumped together? Is that like it's not, I assume she didn't get it 2 master's degrees. Let me just look at that. I've never heard of such a degree before. But yeah, she's never been a teacher. She's never been licensed as a teacher. Looks like she doesn't have an actual education degree from a reputable university anyway, but she did get her business degree and economics degree from UCLA out in liberal woke California. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry about that. I got all worked up. Prager, you got me worked up this morning. I was not anticipating being so outraged on I don't care, I guess, but it does suck that they're indoctrinating our kids so much. It just shows how ignorant they are about how classrooms, how education systems work. I mean, you have school boards in every district that manage this stuff, that they're already like what this is top down. This is state. This is very Soviet like, when you have the federal government jumping in and trying to control how things are taught in every single classroom in the United States. It's already disturbing that you have statewide initiatives like what Ryan what's his face is doing in Oklahoma. Oh, she was in the IDF. Okay, interesting. Well, I don't know if she specifically is a war criminal, but Netanyahu is a war criminal. Oh, AJU is also in California. Okay. They have an interview. Of course, they have an interview with Viktor Orban. I'm getting all worked up again. Oh, I didn't even appear worked. Oh, that's good. I try to be level-headed here. Well, okay, so I have 2 other election videos that I was going to react to planned. They're both not that long, I believe. One of them is 16 minutes. The other one is 8 minutes. Maybe we'll save one for next week. But before I go into that, I was not live streaming last week on Twitch because I was in Ohio. That was the same day as D-Day Conneaut in Conneaut, Ohio. It's the extreme northeastern corner of Ohio, and it's the home of supposedly the world's largest D-Day reenactment. I met up with Hudson, who he edits some of my videos, and also Sawyer from World War Wisdom, and Chris from Vlogging Through History. So we all just hung out up there, and it was a good time. They dressed me up in authentic World War II soldier, a World War II soldier uniform and gear as well. And that was crazy because of how heavy it was. It was like, I can't believe they all wore that. And if you want to see what that looks like, there are pictures on my Instagram and other social media. But we did make a video out of it. Hopefully that will be out within 2 or 3 weeks. The thing is, I'm working on like 7 or 8 other videos at the same time. Right now I'm editing James Madison. I was wanting to get that out today, but it's not going to be done. So next Friday now is the goal. I also am working on a Bleeding Kansas updated video because I've made a couple of Bleeding Kansas videos before, but I wanted to actually go to the spots where a lot of these things happened. And so that's what's happened. That's what I did yesterday. Actually, me and Mrs. Beat went out and we met up. We collaborated with somebody from Missouri. That's right. He goes to the University of Missouri. He came all the way here to Lawrence, Kansas, and we filmed with him at some different sites around town where mostly Quantrill's raid stuff happened, because yesterday was the 162nd anniversary of Quantrill's raid, and also a couple other spots where like John Brown was, and then a couple other spots where stuff went down with the sacking of Lawrence, which people forget that Lawrence was attacked not once but twice for being just anti-slavery. It's like the only town, I think, in the United States, the only town in American history to be completely destroyed because of being against slavery. Pretty cool. I have a lot of pride in my town here. Oh, I know, Tom. He has family in northeastern Ohio. I was actually in Cleveland for a while too. Like I went to the James Garfield Presidential Museum over there in Menor, and then before that, I was down in Canton at the McKinley Museum, and Blogging Through History was with me at both of the presidential museums. This other dude met up with us too. I think his name was Matt, I think, at the Garfield Museum. So, oh, that your brothers were born in Menor? That's awesome. Rosewood, well, I saw signs. Okay. Rosewood. Okay, what are you talking about? Okay. Oh, you saw the pic? Yeah, yeah. Actually, I can bring them up here. Let's see. For those of you who don't want to like venture on social media, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all. There it is. Okay. Yeah, these were intense. There it is. Yeah, they dressed me up there. And we took several pictures. This is down. Oh yeah, behind. This is where the reenactment, the biggest reenactment, because they had multiple reenactments. This is a really neat event. It happened over 3 days. They do it every August. Every August, they've been doing it since like, I believe, the 1970s. There's other spots around the world where they do this. I know there's a spot north of Chicago where they do a D-Day reenactment, but they pretend like this beach is Omaha Beach at Normandy, and they have all these different groups from all over the country and world come here. They camp out over the 3 days. There's a bunch of like authentic guns, tanks, even airplanes were flying above. I got a lot of good footage. It was pretty neat. Yeah. And there's more of a close up there. You can see I kind of look tired. I was tired. I didn't sleep much during that trip. But yeah, I did a lot of traveling this summer. That was the third state I went to this summer. So in June, we went to California, and then we spent most of July in Virginia. And then, yeah, I was in a few days I was in Ohio. That was just me that made that trip. All right, so let's check out this video here. Yeah, I know, right? They're going to say that I was an actual soldier. That's how the internet works. Mr. B looking like a snack. What? What does that even mean, Sir Butts? All right, so History Matters is it's one of the biggest history channels on YouTube. It's been around for almost as long as my channel has been around. And it's all animated or just mostly pictures. I think the guy's from England, but he covers not just American history, of course, but European history, really world history, a lot of European history, though. So just released this 3 days ago. How close was the United States to another civil war in 1876? I will say, just before watching this video, the way that I used to teach my students about this was, yeah, it was really close to another civil war. Although that said, remember, after the Civil War, the southern states were devastated. So as far as like the will to keep fighting, maybe it wasn't there as much as you'd think because they just were still recovering. 11 years later, still it was the economy especially had not recovered. They were still rebuilding infrastructure and things and recovering from the fact that, yeah, you had to adjust your economy because it had depended on slave labor for so long. The carpetbaggers were still around, so the Northerners were down there kind of taking advantage of a lot of Southerners. So, but, there was still a lot of hatred. And this was a very close, bitter election. 1876, of course, Samuel Tilden got more votes than his opponent, Rutherford Hayes, but still lost the election. And there were lots of disputes. It was a very nasty process. We didn't know what was going to happen. It was the final week, I believe, when there was finally a deal made to make it so that there wouldn't be a constitutional crisis. Rutherford Hayes became president. So the Republican Northerner became president. But the deal was all of the federal troops that had been occupying the southern states, mostly, over the previous 11 years, would go back north. So the occupation would end, effectively ending Reconstruction. And that compromise became known as the Compromise of 1877, happened in those early months of 1877 to save the country, because already, again, it was not looking very good. So this video is about that, I'm assuming. The election of 1876 is one of my favorite elections to look at in American history for sure. But I still think Tilden was robbed. Yeah. If 1876 happened, I don't know if our country would survive. I might agree with you there, CJ. I might agree with you there. All right, let's check this thing out.
The United States has, in the past, had some hotly contested elections, but only in a few of them did the political temperature run as high as the election of 1876, which saw the governor of Ohio, Rutherford B. Hayes, victorious and sworn in as president, whereas Samuel J. Tilden, his opponent, had won the popular vote as well as the Electoral College, until he hadn't.
Yeah, it wasn't just the plurality of the vote, it was the majority, 51%. Bad luck.
At this time, anger and resentment at former Civil War opponents was commonplace across the United States, and as the nature of this election's results became clear and how quickly they then changed, many Americans feared that both Hayes and Tilden would simultaneously have themselves inaugurated as president, acts which would then obviously bring the country to the brink of another civil war. But how justified were these fears? How close was the United States to another civil war in the wake of the election of 1876?
Another thing to consider that I hope that he goes into is the fact that Tilden was a Northerner who got a lot of Northern votes. So Tilden was from New York, I believe. Going off, well, he was governor of New York, but where was he originally from? Yeah, he was always from New York. So a Northerner.
So as you'll know, the American Civil War ended in 1865 with the defeat of the Confederacy and the end of slavery as an institution. And after this, the victorious US government had the difficult task of reincorporating the defeated states back into the Union. This was done via a process known as Reconstruction, which was neither popular nor successful. Reconstruction saw the Confederacy divided into occupation zones and run by military governors from the Union. All slaves within them were freed, and the federal government granted itself much greater authority and power to act within those states. For a state to end this status and rejoin the United States properly, they had to ratify the 14th Amendment, which gave everyone born within the US American citizenship and granted them all equal rights under the law. At least in theory. In practice, no. Once they had ratified the 14th Amendment, these southern states were readmitted. 5 seconds after this, many of them passed laws which restricted the rights of black citizens, heavily suppressed their ability to vote, and also turned a blind eye to violence against them. You'd think that this would be a violation of their terms of readmission, which would then come with some consequences, but sad fact, no. The reason that they got away with this was that officially these things weren't done on the basis of race, but instead were based upon things like property ownership and literacy, which were only very heavily correlated with race, which is technically different. Over the next decade, things only got more heated, which brings us to the 1876 election. This came at the end of Ulysses S. Grant's second term.
It's important to say, though, that a lot of this stuff that he just mentioned, this kind of backwardness that happened with African American rights, it happened after 1877 or beginning in 1877. we didn't have Jim Crow laws until after 1877. I think what he's referencing are the Black Codes, which it was similar to Jim Crow laws. I used to tell my students that the Black Codes were kind of more, they were less systemic. They were more just kind of on the fly, kind of throwing things at the wall, see what would stick. A big example that a lot of Southern, not just states, but mostly actually cities had curfews for African Americans. But again, like, federal law was pretty well enforced from between 1865 and 1876. You had federal troops there to enforce the law. So this is why you saw African Americans elected to Congress during that time, because the integrity of the vote was protected because you had federal troops to enforce voter security. And you did have multiple states where the majority of people that lived there in those states were African Americans. And the 15th Amendment gave African Americans, just men, the right to vote. And so now they had majorities. It's kind of crazy to think, but yeah. Many of them would ultimately move away during the Great Migration after the Jim Crow laws were put into place. But just want to stress that Jim Crow laws, they didn't start right after the Civil War mostly. Like most of the Jim Crow laws that we think of actually went into place after Reconstruction.
As president, who at this point was unpopular due to numerous corruption scandals as well as being seen as out of touch with the average American. Knowledge
Ulysses Grant
of this led to the Republicans nominating the more moderate Rutherford B. Hayes, who wanted reconciliation with the South, whereas the Democrats chose Samuel J. Tilden, whose being the governor of New York was hoped could swing the state away from the Republicans, and his economic policies were well liked in the South, many of whose white residents just wanted the Republicans out of office and the end of Reconstruction. The election was a close one, and because information traveled somewhat slowly, each party was mostly working with estimates. The next day, the Democrats proclaimed that Tilden had won the popular vote as well as all of these states, thereby giving him 203 electoral votes, well over the 185 he needed to win. However, the Republicans claimed that in fact Hayes had actually won all of these states, and the only one which was too close to call was Florida, thereby giving Hayes 181 electoral votes to Tilden's 184, with Florida's 4 votes still in play. It won't surprise you to learn that after this, things became quite tense because there were some irregularities that occurred in these 3 states during the vote. In both Louisiana and Florida, violence and fraud had been a big issue. You see, unlike the modern day, there wasn't any standardization of ballots or methods of voting, and in these 2 states, votes were often cast by posting pre-printed party ballots, and the ballots used by the Democrats had been intentionally designed to look like Republican ones, which was believed to have tricked some illiterate voters, i.e. many of them, into voting for the wrong party. Whereas South Carolina had managed the impressive feat of casting more votes than the state had eligible voters. As such,
I'm glad he brought that up. Yeah, South Carolina, lots of shenanigans there in 1876. But also, yeah, it's fascinating to think that when you compare the election of 1876 and the election of 2000, it was all dependent on what happened in Florida. And I'm glad that they also brought up the fact that election security was not nearly as big a deal back then. Like today, elections are far more secure and safe than they were back then.
But probably not for much longer, Republican-run state governments within these states quickly removed the votes that they considered ineligible, i.e. the ones for the Democrats, and Hayes was soon given these 3 states and therefore the presidency. Obviously, this swift change was going to cause some resentment amongst the people, hence why the president-elect was soon given the nickname Rutherford B. Hayes by his opponent. Now, normally it would fall to the vice president.
Yeah, and then somebody tried to attack him. They attacked his family when he was eating dinner. People attacked his house, Rutherford Hayes. So a lot of people hated him
as head of the Senate to certify the election. But 1, he was too busy being dead, and 2, the man who had replaced him as head of the Senate was a Republican, and no Democrat would accept his verdict. Furthermore, the Democrats argued that as the party in control of the House of Representatives under the 12th Amendment, it was up to them to choose the next president, which of course the Republicans were not okay with. Things were looking pretty bad, but guess what though? The 1876 election wasn't done. You see, Tilden wasn't a dummy, and he and his team knew that the Republicans would argue that the federal government had no jurisdiction to override the changed results that the state returned for the election. And so the Democrats got the governor of Oregon, an ally of Tilden, to replace one of the Republican Electoral College voters with the Democrat, who then voted for Tilden even though Oregon had swung for Hayes, thereby giving him 1 vote that he needed for victory. It was at this point that people started to get really angry and talk of a civil war began in earnest. The incumbent President Grant ordered thousands of troops to take up positions in and around Washington, D.C. to protect Hayes during the transition of power. Hayes' swearing-in ceremony was also secretly moved forward by a day and privately into the White House. And furthermore, Democrats were also banned from the later public ceremony to prevent any potential incidents. Whereas on Tilden's behalf, numerous governors offered to call up state militias to fight for Tilden's presidency. And these divides weren't simply across previous Confederate Union lines either. Union General George B. McClellan was gathering soldiers in veteran societies and speaking to former Confederate leaders in case armed conflict should break out. And some of Tilden's supporters also planned to set up their own inauguration in New York to challenge Hayes. At this point, many Americans were now terrified of another civil war and what they called the Mexicanization of American politics. And so, fearing another conflict or at the very least mass civil disobedience, it was decided in the most Washington-esque move ever that this crisis would be solved by a commission. Said commission would have 7 Democrats and 7 Republicans, 3
And 1 independent, supposedly.
from the House, 2 from the Senate, and 2 from the Supreme Court. And it would also have 1 nonpartisan Supreme Court judge who would ultimately be the tiebreaker. And both parties did the unthinkable and they agreed on something. They agreed that said member would be Justice David Davis because he was seen as a fundamentally honorable man. But it was here that the Democrats had a fantastic idea. Let's win him over to our side by offering to make him a senator. A position which he accepted, but because he was said honorable man, he felt that this would sway his vote, and so he resigned the commission. He was then replaced with another justice, this time a Republican, because all of the remaining justices were, and after a series of partisan votes, Hayes won the election with 185 electoral college votes to Tilden's 184. Importantly, it had been agreed beforehand that this commission
1 electoral vote. It's kind of insane to think that you have such a close election and the Electoral College, 185 to 184.
decision would be final. Unless, of course, both halves of Congress rejected it, but since only the House did, President Hayes it was. This decision looked like it could split the country, but it was here that Tilden accepted defeat. Not because he recognized that he'd lost the election, but because most of his fellow Democrats weren't willing to cross certain lines. He'd also done a terrible job of pushing his claim. You see, Tilden was, to use a technical term, loaded, and when his allies asked him to finance their preparations, he refused and instead kept quiet and basically waited to see if he would just be made president. Whereas Hayes did not do this, and he was very clear that he had won and was going to be the next president, and anybody who disagreed was anti-democratic and probably smelled bad too. Tilden only became forceful after the commission had declared for Hayes, at which point it was too late because his backers had mostly calmed down, at least enough to put the guns away. Because whilst many Democrats and Southerners were angry with the outcome, they knew that another civil war was too awful to comprehend. Furthermore, given the slim majority that Republicans had won by and given that many Democrats saw Tilden as a weak candidate, they didn't feel the need to push too hard, because they knew that they'd be guaranteed to win the next one. Spoiler alert, they did not. Now, there's a commonly held belief that says an informal agreement was made between the Democrats and the Republicans.
The 1880 election was also extremely close. That was the one that Garfield won.
Known by some as the corrupt bargain of 1877, wherein the Democrats gave Hayes the presidency in return for him ending Reconstruction and withdrawing federal troops from the South. Now, he actually did do these things, but there's zero evidence of such an agreement ever being made. Now,
nothing was written down. Yeah, but if you look at the actions, that's why we bring this whole compromise of 1877 up.
Of course, none of them would have actually written this down. It's just simply the case that Hayes was a much more moderate Republican, and he believed that Grant and his party had been far too harsh on the former Confederacy.
Well, but yeah, he sincerely believed it, but also he wanted to reduce tensions, and so this was the best way that he thought he could do that.
Also, had this deal existed, then the House of Representatives almost certainly wouldn't have continually refused to acknowledge Hayes' presidency. It even went so far as to pass a bill stating that Tilden was the actual winner of the 1876 election and that Hayes' presidency was illegitimate. Realistically, of course, this didn't do anything except for make them feel better about the situation, but either way, the election was over. And so, civil war, whilst closer than many would have imagined, was made more likely due to a lack of process for a contested election. But it was ultimately prevented by the culture of democracy that the vast majority of Americans and their representatives held dear. Whilst of course people were extremely angry, the vast majority of politicians on both sides recognized the horrors of the Civil War could never be revisited, and that for the sake of themselves in the United States, maintaining a stable form of government trumped all else. Cooler heads had prevailed. I hope you enjoyed this episode, with a special thanks to my patrons, James Bizanet.
Pretty good summary there. I learned a couple things. I didn't know the thing that he said about Louisiana, where they pre-printed the ballots.
Charged, but probably not for much longer, Republican-run state governments within these states quickly removed the votes that they considered ineligible, and the ballots used by the Democrats had been intentionally designed to look like Republican ones.
I didn't, or maybe I used to know that and I forgot about it. Yeah. So anyway, great video. We'll watch the other one next week, I think. That's the one that looks at the election of 2004 by PragerU, not to be confused with PragerU. So anyway, that PragerU thing really kind of I was not anticipating, but I may have to start reacting more to them again. I kind of thought that they were losing influence there for a while, but it still looks like they have a lot of money. So we need to keep fighting them, and especially now that some states are forcing their teachers, not forcing their teachers necessarily, maybe they are, but highly encouraging their teachers to play their stuff and use their curriculum materials. And then especially now with what's going on with the Smithsonian, where the Trump administration wants to rewrite history, whitewash history. It's not good. When are we going to get Beat You? Beat You. Yeah, I love it. Yeah. It's kind of wild to think of how much worse of a president Grant was compared to Eisenhower. Yeah, but Grant still, I think, was maybe slightly underrated. He did some good things in terms of especially enforcement of civil rights and the more strict laws regarding Reconstruction. I think it's crazy to think that he was stricter on Reconstruction than Hayes, who I think actually had more left-leaning views overall. Hey, I've been to that IKEA in Atlanta many, many years ago. It's the first time I ever went to an IKEA. Man, he's making the rounds, though. I saw he got booed a lot at the Union Station in D.C. That was pretty fun to watch that. Don't know if you know about this, but there's a massive scandal surrounding Benny Johnson using subscriber bots to show influence that could change independent creation on YouTube forever. Oh. I'm not surprised. Maybe PragerU's doing something similar, huh? Or ViewBots. Yeah, how many like comments do they get, I wonder? Okay. So like if you go to PragerU, let's go back over here and check this out. All right, I'm gonna put this back on the screen. So here's PragerU's 3.38 million subscribers. I gotta get more subscribers in PragerU. Can you trust Wikipedia? I bet you they're going to say leftist indoctrination. But no, it has 587,000 views, 4,600 likes, which that's pretty low for like to compare it to my channel. Like let's just go to one of my videos that has a comparable amount of views. So, like, let's go to that. Okay, again, that video has 587,000 views. Let's go to a video I have that has comparable. Let's see here. 596,000.
Mr. Beat presents.
Has 7,800 likes compared to 4,600. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty low amount of likes. But then how many comments does it have? It has 984. That's all right. My that's comparable to my video that has that many views, I guess. Maybe there's some astroturfing going on. We don't know. There's bots all over. I think 75% probably at least now of the internet is bots, and that number continues to rise. That's depressing. That's really depressing. So hopefully there's no bots on here. I think you're all real people, aren't you? Yeah. Oh, he has a massive spike in subscribers, but his views are flat. It's sad that I know who Benny Johnson is. A big reason why I know who he is, though, is because he was one of the guys who got busted for apparently accepting a lot of money from the Russian government to make Russian state propaganda. PragerU are making those. Oh, Iron Dragon. I haven't said hi to you yet. PragerU are making those profiles on the founding fathers for the official White House channel. Oh my gosh, that's what was popping up there. I was seeing that earlier. So the George Wythe, yeah, George Wythe, Oliver Wolcott, John Witherspoon. Those are all going to be official White House Founders Museum videos. Interesting. They're all very short. I'm sure that they're not too controversial. I would think that. Yeah, it's just very up and down. They either have 10,000 views or they have 800,000 views. It's crazy. I don't know. Something sus about it. Yeah, Tenet Media. That's the story I was referencing. Russian state propaganda, basically, and they paid Johnson as well as Tim Pool, I believe, and Dave Rubin a bunch of money to promote Russian government talking points, which they did. And then they acted like, oh, I didn't know later on. Yeah. Well, if you have a lot of money, that's how you do it. I've never paid for views. If I did, I'd have a lot more views. But that's... I'm still very lucky that I have the views I do. Anyway, we've gone over an hour. It's been great to have you here this Friday morning. I do this every Friday morning at 9 a.m. Central, generally. And I react to history videos, sometimes geography and economics. Lately, it's been a lot of history, political history. I didn't get to the Boone U 2004 election video, but I'm going to react to that next week. But otherwise, if you have videos you'd like to suggest to me to react to, you can reach out via email or social media. I know some of you have messaged me on Blue Sky. That's fine. Although just full transparency here, I don't always check DMs on social media because sometimes it gets out of hand. And I've been trying to get on social media less and less every single day. I've been happier because of it. I suggest the same, actually. Social media is destroying society, in my humble opinion. Well, much love to you as well, Tom. Thanks for being here. Yeah, Howard Dean was 2004. Yeah. Oh, sure, yeah. And I'm glad I'll try to follow you on one of these social media platforms. If you tell me who you are on here, we'll try to connect on other platforms. I'm John Kerry reporting for duty. Nice reference there. Okay. All right. Thanks for being here. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next time. Jeffrey Epstein did not kill himself.